Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining me. Before we get to your questions, I want to give you a quick recap of my trip, important trip to India. I've spent the last couple of days here working on strengthening trade and investment ties, and the reason is simple. We believe that India and the Indo-Pacific region is key on reaching the goal that Prime Minister Carney has set for Canada, hitting $300 billion of non-US exports in the next 10 years. This trip builds on the energy from the G7 leaders meeting and other ministerial trips, such as our foreign ministers meeting in both Canada and here in India. Many of our peer countries are stepping up with more ambition and advocacy efforts. They are showing up, and so must Canada. As trade diversification is top of mind for many countries, it is important that Canada be at the forefront to showcase our world-class products and services with the aim of creating a more prosperous, resilient, and secure economic future for Canadians. In 2024, Canada's bilateral trade with India surpassed $30 billion, making India Canada's third largest trading partner in the Indo-Pacific, with much more room to grow. And we invest in each other with enviable success, creating thousands of jobs both at home and here in India. Canadian firms employ at least 50,000 people in India, while Indian investors in Canada employ about 36,000 people, and these figures keep growing. India is already the world's fifth largest economy and is expected to become the third largest. They're one of the fastest growing economies in the G20, and Canada can provide the goods and services they need to power their growth. In fact, deepening trade ties in the Indo-Pacific region and expanding markets will continue to be key in our trade diversification strategy. As our two countries accelerate momentum towards a stronger partnership, I've been in discussions this week to strengthen Canada and India's economic collaboration. I met with my counterpart, Minister Goyal, and together we launched the Canada-India Ministerial Dialogue on Trade and Investment, a platform for advancing trade and investment that will keep our shared commercial momentum going. We had productive discussions around where we can do more in many sectors of opportunities. As a result of our meeting, I'm looking forward to welcoming Minister Goyal and a trade delegation early next year. I also met with Hardeep Singh Puri, India's Minister of Petroleum and Natural Gas, to discuss how Canada can support India's domestic energy needs. India will need 70% more energy by 2040, and Canada, as the world's energy superpower, is well positioned as a reliable and stable partner, which can help India achieve its growth targets with clean energy, such as LNG and nuclear. From energy and agri-food to innovation and infrastructure, Canadian businesses are selling exactly what partners like India are looking to buy. Canada is also home to nearly 1.5 million people of Indian origin, and with our bilateral trade and investment ramping up, there is a need to increase connectivity between our countries. I met with Air Canada's India lead in New Delhi to advance our shared goal of strengthening air links and to bring our people and businesses closer together. I also sat down with the Bhartiya Group, Tata, HCL, Indian companies who have deep roots in Canada, employing thousands of Canadians and investing millions in our economy. Not only that, many of these conglomerates are looking to make major investments in Canada. As part of my portfolio, I've been tasked with foreign investment attraction, and the Major Projects Office will play a significant role in attracting these investments. Yesterday, the Prime Minister announced a new tranche of projects, and throughout my conversations here, many companies are looking at these lists to see where they can collaborate and invest. I was also pleased to hear that these companies see much more opportunity to grow in Canada. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention attending the Confederation of Indian Industry Partnership Summit today, where I spoke to a key group of Indian private and public sector decision makers about the advantages of doing business with Canada and how Canada and India can create more opportunities together. What I really want Canadians to know is this. Canada understands that being present and meeting face-to-face is critical for building lasting trade and investment partnerships that can help create economic security, partners that will see more Canadian exports and expertise flow around the world, creating good jobs at home, and partnerships that move us from reliance to resilience. Thank you, merci, and I'm happy to take your questions today.
All right, so just a quick reminder for people joining us on Zoom, if you want to use the raise hand function, if you have a question. Juste un petit rappel pour les gens qui nous joignent en ligne, utilisez la fonction main levée si vous avez une question. La première question ira à Christian Noël de Radio-Canada. La parole est à toi. Christian, on ne t'entend pas, tu es sur sourdine. All right, I'm going to come back to Christian afterwards. I'm going to go with Johanna Smith from The Logic. The floor is yours.
Hi, Minister. Thanks for taking our questions today. So first of all, there was some reporting from your trip in India that Canada was actually was restarting trade talks with India. Can you clarify whether these trade talks are going towards a free trade agreement, or are we talking about something different at this point?
So I think, Joanna, your question is very important. When you look at new government, new focus, new prime minister, the conversations here are about exploring opportunities, sectors of opportunities, not necessarily trade talks, but really in the early phases of scoping what it could look like. And so when we sat down with Minister Goyal, we focused on sectors of opportunity, on agriculture, infrastructure, clean tech, aerospace, many of these sectors, digital innovation, to really see what's next, the path forward. And I'm pleased to announce that Minister Goyal will be coming to Canada with a trade and investment delegation early next year. And so it's really building that momentum from when the Prime Ministers have spoke back in June about economic collaboration. And here I am building on that energy.
Okay, and thank you for that. And a follow-up, you mentioned that some of these companies have been looking at the list of projects of national interest. Is there anything in particular, especially maybe regarding critical minerals, that they seem especially interested in investing in?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I heard a lot on the energy front when I sat down with Minister Puri, when I sat down with industry. Look, India is going to need 70% more energy by 2040 just because of their growth. They're well positioned to receive more LNG from Canada. They are already familiar with our CANDU reactors. I believe they have over 17 reactors here with Canadian technology. And so they are looking at a lot of the projects there with a lot of interest. And so I think it's important to have these conversations, as Prime Minister Carney has rightfully said, that we need $500 billion to build these nation-building projects. And we are getting calls from all around the world. I'm getting calls from all around the world with a lot of interest on how we can get people engaged and get these big projects built, because it's important. When you look at why we're building them, it's nation-building projects, but it's also important for Canadians and communities across Canada because they will take part in building these projects. We're going to need hundreds of thousands of skilled trade folks to build these projects. And so it's very exciting. People are excited at looking at Canada, looking at what we put in budget 2025 to incentivize many of these investments.
OK, we're going to go back to Christian Noël. Christian, la parole est à toi. So we might have a problem with Christian, so we're going to go to Ashley Burke from CBC. The floor is yours.
Good morning. You mentioned that right now trade talks have not resumed, but do you see that as a next step, something that could be happening in the near future?
So what I see is scoping more of those conversations between industries. Look, I met with a bunch of companies. I was here for about 48 hours roughly, and so I need to continue having those conversations. And I think Minister Goyal wants to continue having those conversations, and that's why he's going to be bringing a delegation to Canada to scope out more opportunities. And so this is still early in the conversation, but I've been very clear. This is a new government, new mandate, new prime minister. And so starting afresh in terms of where we can go next is very important to know.
And which Indian companies are looking at investing in Canada specifically? Can you talk about if any of them are coming on that trade mission, where they'll be visiting?
Yeah, so if you look at some of these companies like Tata, you look at Bhartiya Group, they both have operations in Canada already, whether it's in the pharmaceuticals industry, whether it's in the IT industry. And so there's a lot of, here in India, they're not institutional investors or companies or conglomerates, family-run operations. And so things are done a little bit differently over here. But again, there's so many of them to have those conversations. And that's why Minister Goyal is hoping to bring some of them along with him in the coming months so we can showcase what Canada has to offer.
All right, the next question will be from Zian Loom from Politico.
Hi, thank you for taking our questions. So you and Minister Goyal had the 7th MDTI, the first, I think, since May 2023 this week. Could you help us understand what was on the agenda? So, like, did you pick things up where things left off 2.5 years ago? Could you give an example of a novel discussion you've had to support this new government, new mandate, new prime minister point you made earlier?
Yeah, absolutely, Ziana. Look, I think having a ministerial dialogue on investment and trade after many, many years is very important to start afresh, to look at things. I mean, contexts have changed from even January. I mean, we're in a different situation with international trade headwinds. There's trade agreements being launched. We launched negotiations with the Philippines, with Thailand, as announced a couple of weeks ago when the Prime Minister and I were in Asia. And there's a lot of interest, folks looking to Canada because we do have a lot to offer. And so, as I mentioned earlier, some of the sectors of focus were around, aerospace, agriculture, digital innovation, AI, even education. There was a deep conversation on education and how Canadian institutions can set up shop here in India because of our world-class education system in Canada and the opportunities that institutions can come to India and get, and so it was a wide-ranging conversation on trade, but also on investments and what more can we do. Our pension funds here in India have invested roughly $107 billion over the last number of years, building up infrastructure. And so they're familiar in this environment. I sat down with our pension funds as well to see what more we can do in terms of collaboration and bringing some of that investment towards Canada.
And I have a follow-up. May you confirm if the FIPA talks with the UAE have concluded and if an agreement will be signed when the PM and Finance Minister head to the UAE next week?
So what I can confirm is those conversations are very live on FIPA. That's a conversation that's been going on for over a decade. And I feel like we're making a lot of progress with the UAE. As you know, their sovereign wealth fund is worth over $1 trillion. They're looking to deploy capital in Canada. And we want to be sure that we're there to facilitate some of these conversations and make sure that there's agreements in place. And so conversations are progressing really well, and I'm sure we'll have more to say very soon.
All right, the next question will go to Dharampreet Dhillon. The floor is yours.
Hello, Minister. Thank you very much for taking our questions. Is it possible if you can speak in Punjabi for our Punjabi listenership, or we will have to
Yes,
stick?
I can try my best.
Okay, perfect. So, Minister, do you have any expectations, like any amount in mind that you want to increase this much of trade with India? And what is your plan? Like, is there any certain goal when it comes to India as a trade partner?
Look, Dharampreet, it was a very good question ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਵੱਲੋਂ ਜੋ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਟ੍ਰੇਡ ਦੀ ਗੱਲ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਆ as time ਤਕਰੀਬਨ $30 billion ਦਾ ਟ੍ਰੇਡ ਆਲਰੇਡੀ ਹੋ ਰਿਹਾ ਹੈਗਾ ਐਂਡ ਸੋ ਜਦੋਂ ਅਸੀਂ ਬੈਠੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਸੀਗੇ ਮਿਨਿਸਟਰ ਗੋਇਲ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਸੈਕਟਰਸ ਅਸੀਂ ਆਇਡੈਂਟੀਫਾਈ ਕੀਤੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਆ ਉਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕਾਫੀ opportunities ਹੈਗੀਆਂ and so I think it's important to note, Dharampreet, that setting a goal, we need our sectors to sit down. The government can help facilitate those conversations, but at the end of the day, it's the business, the B2B is that what really drives it. From my experience in the private sector, 13 years in international trade, we need to bring businesses along. And so having those exploratory talks on sectors of focus will help lead to more trade, no doubt about that. And so, we're already doing 30+ billion, and I know there's much more room to grow.
So as a follow-up, some Sikh organizations are concerned about your trip to India, and they are saying that since after the killing of Bhai Hardeep Singh Nijjar, there is still things are not clear between India and Canada. And why is Canada pursuing these trade talks with India?
So I think first and foremost, it's important to note that the safety and security of Canadians is paramount to this government. You look at what we're doing in the budget, ਅਸੀਂ ਇੱਕ ਹਜ਼ਾਰ ਹੋਰ RCMP officer hire ਕਰਨਾ ਹੈਗਾ, ਇੱਕ ਹਜ਼ਾਰ ਹੋਰ CBSA officer hire ਕਰਨਾ ਹੈਗਾ ਆ, and so ਜਿਹੜੀ law enforcement ਦੀ dialogue ਚੱਲ ਰਹੀ ਹੈਗੀ ਆ, between Canada and India, that will continue. There's dialogue going on law enforcement. cooperation, and that will continue. My job as the Minister of International Trade is to continue the economic dialogue. And so I want to say to Canadians watching that, we are making the investments in public safety. We're hiring 1,000 more CBSA officers. We're hiring 1,000 more RCMP officers if you look at our budget. And it's important to note that, as the Minister of Foreign Affairs has said, there's a law enforcement dialogue happening. And my job as the Minister of International Trade is to focus on the economic dialogue.
So Ashley, I see you have another question. The floor is yours.
The UAE, the FIPA that you were talking about, you mentioned it's been more than a decade that Canada's been working on this. Why wasn't it signed in the past? What was going on with the government that they didn't get to the point where they moved forward? Was it a risk aversion issue?
I mean, look, there's many things going on in terms of capacity. Actually, you'll see in the budget, there's more money for trade negotiators. Resources were always a thing, and we need to make sure we make those investments, especially as more and more countries want to negotiate, want to sign with Canada, want to do more trade with Canada. And so we're putting the necessary investments in budget 2025 to make sure that we have the resources to effectively move forward on many of these negotiations. And so I think it's resulting in some great fruits. If you look at what we did with Indonesia just a few weeks ago, signing SIPA with them, that was a long time coming. We were able to get that done. And likewise, we're going to have the same energy to get more of those trade agreements done.
And at the G20, when the Prime Minister's there, is there anything that's going to be close enough when it comes to trade talks to sign there with any of the countries? And do you see any of these exploratory conversations leading to anything being signed with India at that time?
What I see from the Prime Minister and from my conversations at the G20 for trade ministers is to make sure that Canada is there. We're showing up. We're having those conversations. People are really interested in what Canada has to offer, and we need to continue to show up. As I said, there's many countries out there, many of our peer countries that are very ambitious. They're actively showing up. They're showcasing their countries, and we need to do the same thing for Canada. We have a lot to offer on the world stage, and I know I'm very excited for the Prime Minister to be attending the G20 to continue those conversations around trade and investments with many countries. And so there's a lot of opportunities that I foresee coming up there.
So Ashley, I see you still have your hand raised. Do you have one final question or no? All right. So thank you for taking our questions, Minister. This will conclude the press conference. Ceci mettra fin à la conférence de presse.
Thanks so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you.